to the This Gal Travels podcast, the show that helps you travel more, travel easier, and travel better. I'm Trina, and today I am going to talk about tour versus independent travel. Which should you choose? My best pro traveler tip is always at the end of the show, so make sure you listen all the way through. So let's start by defining and explaining the difference between traveling by tour and traveling independently. Traveling by tour is when you hire a company to basically make all the travel arrangements for you. I mean, you still have to take care of your passport and I'm sure the visas and that sort of thing, assuming it's an international trip. But they take care of everything else. They set up the hotels, they set up the drivers, everything is taken care of for you, and you are basically taken care of from the time you arrive at the airport to the time you leave, if that's the way you want to arrange it. Independent travel, it would be basically you plan the entire trip yourself. You take everything at whatever pace you want. You set all the rules. Okay? When you independently travel, you decide exactly what you want to do, when you want to do it, where you want to go, how fast you want to travel, how slow you want to travel. You can take things out of your itinerary or add them in, whatever you want to do. So that's your big difference. Either you have handover control to someone else who is going to definitely make the most of your time, in the sense of tours are very good for getting things done very quickly, getting a lot of things into a short time. Or you keep all the control entirely for yourself, and you never have to go on someone else's schedule. If you want to sleep in, you sleep in, et cetera, et cetera. So let's go a little deeper and look at the pros and cons of each type of travel. Starting with tour travel. The pros would certainly be, as I say, well, the one thing tours do really well is they get you to going to a lot of things in a very short period of time. They have the days planned out like crazy. They know exactly what they can get to, how much they can get to, and because they have their drivers and everyone is already set up. I mean, you might just be on a bus, so it might be one driver and you're on a mini bus with a bunch of other people. And that's the thing, is on tours, we're talking about where you're going with a whole group of people. And whether it's you've brought your whole group because the whole tour is your family, or whether you're going on a trip, on a tour with a whole bunch of strangers, will definitely sort of change the flavor of the tour. As to whether you're meeting new people and enjoying the people you're meeting. And I know they have group tours that are geared towards certain demographics. You know, it might be singles in their 30s, or it might be, you know, people over 50, or sometimes they are specific, and sometimes it's simply everyone who wants to go to that destination. But as I say, one of the pros is that you get to do a lot very quickly. It's very well planned out. And besides it being planned out, the nice thing about it is you didn't have to plan it, okay? Those are the two best things I think about a tour, is you get to see a whole lot very quickly, and you don't have to plan it. You just have to show up. And that's what you are paying the tour company for, is to do all that organization for you, all that figuring, and to just make sure you see as much as possible. One of the things that tours do is they keep you usually at a certain level of comfort. I'd say depending on the type of tour you choose, it goes anywhere from mid-range on all the way up to full luxury. And I am not talking, I know they have backpacker tours, and that's not what I'm talking about today. Nothing wrong with them, just not what I'm talking about today. So you can pretty much, I would expect if you're on a tour that your hotels and that are going to be of a certain level. And it's not that you can't get that when you independent travel, but it's something we'll talk about as far as considerations. But so you have a certain level of comfort, you have everything planned out for you. The idea basically is when you take a tour, you want it to be fairly stress-free. Once you've got your documents and you get there, the rest is in someone else's hands. And those are the pros of going on a tour. Another thing that tours do pretty well, depending on the guide, is that they keep you informed of history and some culture, and they fill you in on the things that you're looking at as you're looking at them. If they're doing a good job, they're filling you in on all that sort of thing. Not to mention, if there's an opportunity for it, they might take you somewhere where you can get a cultural show. And So that way you can be guaranteed that you're going to get to see the special dances of the region, whether it's the time of year that they normally do it or not. There are some places that will put on a special show for tourists. And so you don't have to worry if you're there at the right time of year for the particular celebration that they normally do those things at. So those are some of the things that are advantages of traveling on a tour. However, there are disadvantages to traveling by tour. The first one being it's expensive. I look at a tour price and I say, oh, I can make that trip for a third of the cost or a quarter of the cost. But that's the thing, is you're paying them for the convenience of all those advantages we just stated. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for convenience, you're paying for them to handle all the setup, all the hassles, and they are usually getting you like higher end. I would expect if you're on a tour that if you are on a bus that it's got cushy seats and air conditioning. Okay, you don't always do that if you travel independently. And of course, again, depends on budget, but they're going to make sure you're comfortable. So you not only have the more comfy modes of transport and comfier places to stay, but you have someone doing all the arrangements for you. So you're paying a premium for that. Okay, you're paying a premium, but that is what the cost of the tour is going to, is so that you are taken care of, so you don't have anything to worry about. So that's one of the disadvantages, though, is tours do cost more. Another disadvantage of tours is that while they get you to a lot of things in a short period of time, that means you are sort of rushing around when you're on the tour. You know, it's like you got to be here by this time, here by this time. Oh, we're going to see this, this, and this today. We have 25 minutes here and 38 minutes there, and you got to keep it moving, and you got to stay up with the tour. And if you wanted to stop and stay somewhere longer, you may not have that opportunity. You might be really enjoying a place, and you might just wish you could stop and stay, whether it be for an extra afternoon or a day or a couple of nights. But on a tour, you just don't have that option. And so that's one of the disadvantages of a tour. And also, depending on the tour, now it depends on the tour, but they do keep you running at a pretty breakneck pace. And I'll be honest, when I was traveling with my husband, Tim, who was mostly blind. And I only say that, if you hear me say that like every episode, it's because I know not everyone knows the story. But yeah, he was mostly blind. And we could not keep up with tours. We just flat out couldn't keep up with them. Not that they're my style of travel anyways, but we couldn't keep up if we had wanted to. So you gotta keep in mind of whether you want to keep that kind of pace, or you need to look for a tour where they actually schedule some off time within the tour. Some of them do. Some of them are starting to do that, where it's like, oh, hey, we're going to do all this, and we're going to do a morning tour, and then you could have a free afternoon, and the afternoon and evening are all yours. And if you want to go collapse and take a nap, you can. If you want to go out, walk around town, you can. That sounds great to me. If you're going to do a tour, I like the ones that have some space in them. But those are a couple of the negatives of tours, is the cost, and you don't really have much freedom or say in what you're going to go do. So let's look at the advantages of independent travel. First off, it's going to be cheaper. Even if you are staying at the same kinds of hotels or whatever accommodations that you would have on a tour, I can almost guarantee that you can bring the cost of your travels in cheaper by yourself than on a tour. Can pretty much guarantee that. Okay? Even if you're staying in the same level of places, you're going to find a way to do it cheaper than the cost of a tour would be. The second thing that's an advantage for independent travel is, of course, you get to set your own schedule. You can do it any way you want. If you say, hey, I like this place, I want to stay an extra 3 days just because I'm having fun here, you can. If you say, oh, hey, I was going to go rush off and do this other thing, but you know what? I think I'm just going to enjoy a coffee this afternoon. Or you might be just the opposite. You say, I was going to take this afternoon off, but I got some energy and I feel I'm going to go shop art galleries down in this area of town. I hadn't planned on it, but let's go explore. So independent travel, you can set it up and do it any way you want. Absolutely, completely up to you. Of course, now we have to look at the downsides of independent travel. One, You are responsible for all your plans. And now I have tips. I have absolute tips for travel planning, but there's a whole episode that I did on the podcast of travel planning. So I'm going to tell you to go listen to that. I'm not giving tips here on the travel planning. But one of the disadvantages is you do need to do your own travel planning. And if you absolutely hate travel planning, then, well, maybe independent travel isn't quite for you. Although I will say it's not as hard as you think. It's not that hard anymore. You've got, between smartphone and word of mouth and everything else, it's not that hard. But if you don't like travel planning, you're going to find that challenging in independent travel. If you're someone that likes everything planned out, independent travel may not be for you, because even if you do it yourself, you might need it super planned out. And one of the wonderful things about independent travel is that you do have that freedom to change your mind. So it may not suit your personality. I forgot one of the advantages that independent travel has over tour travel is that when you independent travel, number one, you are going to get to know people better. Okay, you are going to get to meet locals. Wherever local is, you're going to get to meet locals, and you're going to be able to talk to them more and have conversations and get to know people, make new friends. You generally don't have time for that when you're on a tour. I mean, you might make friends on the tour itself, but you're not going to generally get too much interaction with locals and make local friends. That's less than likely. Also, as I mentioned, that when you're on a tour, you might go to cultural performances. Well, when you end up at cultural events, when you travel independently, you tend to end up at basically fully authentic events. You know, I've been to a fire festival and water festival and the Damba festival, and you just go to all these things, and true, you have to be in the right place at the right time if they're not like programmed and scheduled performances and that sort of thing. But it is, shall we say, a touch more authentic. Okay, your cultural experiences are a little bit more real and not so put on. And not that I disagree with them doing cultural shows so that more people can see what their culture is all about. That's completely fine. But if you're looking for a little more authentic experience, you're going to get it more when you travel independently. Of course, the downside to that is you have to do your research and make sure you're going to be at the place at the time that whatever festival you're interested is going on. Or you might just walk into one accidentally. I mean, that happens. You're somewhere and they're like, oh, it's the such and such holiday. And you're like, oh, it is. Okay, cool. And you celebrate along. And then sometimes you say, oh, hey, there's a festival. Let's go. And you go flying. That's what we did for the water festival. We were in Thailand, and I saw that they had their water festival coming up in Myanmar. And I said, hey, we can get a flight. Let's go. And we went and spent a month in Myanmar, 5 days of which was the water festival. It was fantastic. But as I say, in independent travel, it's not guaranteed how it's going to go down. By the way, as we are talking about tours, I have added a page to my website where I have picked out the tours that I would take. And I have only chosen tours that are in places I've been. So I could look at the list of things to do and say, oh yeah, they got everything. They got all the good stuff here. And I have only chosen tours to places that I have been, and basically some of my favorite places that I have been. And so I'm going to put a link in the description if you want to check out what I think are some awesome places to travel and awesome tours I would take if I were the kind of person who took tours. They're almost like the kind of tours I would organize if I were at that point in my travel career where I was actually organizing trips for someone else. So I have as I say, it's a really specialty page because it's only places I can vouch for. And so if you want to take a look at tours, you might want to start there because there's some fun stuff. There's some really fun stuff in there. So which do you choose, tour or independent travel? Let's take a look at some of the considerations that you want to consider. Okay, so first thing I would consider is destination. If it's an easy destination, well, that doesn't really help you make a decision. It depends on whether you like to travel plan or not. If it's an easy destination, then you're going to have to consider other factors. If it's a more challenging destination, and the fact that it's challenging, and the challenging part of it, if that part is making you hesitate to go, then that might be a good time for a tour. Okay, because if you're going somewhere that's a little rough and ready, a place that is, as I say, challenging to get around, then having a tour, having someone that knows how to arrange it, how to get you around from place to place in some areas that are more challenging than others, then that would be a good time to consider using a tour, especially if it's going to keep you from going. The thing is, I want you to pick the place that you're going to love going, or you hope you're going to love going, the place that you dream about, and that's where I want you to go, is your absolute first best choice of where to go. And I don't want something to stop you like you're intimidated by the planning and by the challenge of the place. If you're intimidated by the place, like the logistics of the place, take a tour, make it easy on yourself, and get yourself there, okay? Get yourself to your dream destination. The next consideration is, honestly, I would consider who you're traveling with. Are you traveling by yourself, with a significant other, or your family? Honestly, I've never traveled with a large group, not since I was in high school band and we went to Europe, and that doesn't count. I have not traveled with a large group of people, like family or a group of friends or anything like that. But if I had a family and I had to worry about the kids and this and that and the other thing, that would be a time I think I would consider a tour. Because if you're already having to keep an eye on everybody in a group, the idea of having a tour to sort of take some of the pressure off you for wrangling everybody, it seems like a good idea. Now, your family, maybe it's not an issue. Maybe there's not a lot to wrangle. Maybe the kids are of an age where they can go off and be independent and that sort of thing, and that's a whole nother story. As I say, I have not done that, so I will leave that to you. But consider, if the family is a handful, a tour might be a good idea. Or any large group. Maybe you're having a large group that is because it's someone's 40th birthday or 50th birthday, or someone's getting married. All those things are times when you might want to do a tour. Okay? It's if you're doing a large group of people, it might just make your life easier. It depends on how much of an organizer you are. But as I say, a large group of people is a time when you might want to consider a tour a little more strongly. If you are just one or two people, again, that sort of isn't really a huge decision factor for tour or not. Then that's completely a little bit more your personality, and it's simply not as much of a deciding factor. And of course, the other thing you need to consider, whether you're going to go tour or independent, is your budget. If money's not a problem, then again, that's not a deciding factor for you. But if you're on a tight budget, I'm going to recommend independent travel, hands down. Because as I say, you can find ways to stay at the same level of comfort hotels as would be on the tour, and it will be a lot cheaper, because you're not paying someone else to make those arrangements for you. So yeah, if you are on a tight budget, I highly recommend that you travel independently. You are just going to spend a whole lot less money, and that'll free you up to not be worrying about the money you're spending while you're on your trip. And if you haven't heard me talk about it before, I travel what I call comfort budget style, which basically means instead of trying to stay in like mid-range and above hotels, and I don't stay in like backpacker hostels. Not that I have anything against hostels, but the dorm room type thing has never been my thing, no matter what age I was. But I will stay in a hostel if I have a private room, okay? But I stay as cheaply as I can while still being comfortable. To me, that is the ideal level of travel, is travel almost like a backpacker, but being just a little bit more comfortable. And I'll be honest, I would pretty much travel that way no matter how much money I had. You could give me $1 million tomorrow and I would still travel that way. I might treat myself once in a while, but honestly, for me, a hotel room is just a place to crash, and as long as I have a little desk for my computer and a comfortable bed and everything's clean and works, that's all I need. But that's me. You need to figure out what level of comfort that you want, but as I say, independent travel will always come up cheaper. And of course, as I talk about these two things, traveling by tour or traveling independently are not mutually exclusive. You absolutely can do both, okay? I've always said, if you're going to take a tour, try to leave a few days on either end of the trip to wander around and explore for yourself. Okay? You can take that even further where, depending on the length of the tour, you could say take 1 week, that's a tour, and I would probably start with the tour, because one, you might pick up some really awesome travel tips for your destination while you're on the tour. The tour guide might say, oh, by the way, always know that when you're here, you bargain, or, oh, whatever you do, don't bargain here, or they might say, this is easier way to get money, and you'll have a little bit of lay of the land if you start with the tour and then end independently. That would be my probable recommendation in most cases. But you could take like a week-long tour that would get you to the major stuff and then leave yourself another full week to explore the places that the tour may not cover. Okay, so that's a little bit of a hybrid of the two travel styles. And in fact, if you are new to travel, it might be the perfect kind of thing, because then your first trip, it doesn't have to be your first trip, but you might try both, and then you'll know for sure which one you like better. You might come out of it and say, oh yeah, I absolutely loved being on the tour because I didn't have to worry about anything. Or you might come out saying, oh man, yeah, I hated the tour. I hated being, always on a schedule, and I loved just being independent and being able to do what I wanted when I wanted. You've got to decide for yourself. But if you did a hybrid trip, and then you have the best of both worlds, and then maybe the next time it won't even be a question. You'll already know which way you want to travel. And I will say, just so you know, that when you independent travel, sometimes you do end up on tours. And that's because certain places have to be explored by a tour. If you want to go see orangutans in Indonesia, you're going to have to take a tour, because you can't just go tromping around the jungle on your own, and it can be 2 or 3 days, but you're going to end up on a tour. We went to Tanah Toraja, and I'd say we did a tour, but really, then that's a place in Indonesia on the island of Sulawesi, and the people there have very interesting death rituals, and they have 5-day-long funerals, and they take years to plan, and there's an entire interesting culture going on there. But we actually did a 5-day tour there. But I say in that case, it wasn't a tour as much as we hired a private guide. And that's what you'll do on independent travel sometimes, is you're going to want to go do something that requires a guide. And you might need to hire a guide, or a guide and a driver, or maybe your driver will double as a guide. But independent doesn't mean you are completely on your own all the time. There are times when you are going to have to go on tour type situation. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a group tour that is rushing around. Depending on where you're going and your level of travel experience, a hybrid vacation might be really ideal. By the way, if you're enjoying this podcast and you know someone that might enjoy the material as well, please share it around and let everyone know. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks. And on the idea of hybrid travel, I'm going to tell you that today's pro traveler tip is just that, although it's a little bit more extreme. Okay, because I'm going to say that if you are a tour person and you choose a tour, depending on where you go, find something in the place you're going to that is not on the tour. Okay, find something that is not on the tour, and then leave yourself a few days, whatever time you need, and leave yourself some time on the end of your trip to go do that thing. And if you're going somewhere that's awesome, like Africa, make time to go to a local market. I mean, that's my high recommendation, is to go to a local market. Not that that's the only thing you can do. There's arts and culture centers everywhere. You can almost always catch some sort of dance performance at the cultural centers. As I say, and then they'll have arts places as well, although you might do those on the tour, but find something in the place you're going that you can do on your own independently. Make it a point to do it, okay? And if you're in a place that's a really interesting, chaotic city, leave yourself at least a day to go and wander around that wonderfully beautiful, chaotic city, because most chaotic cities are just really fun to walk around. So challenge yourself is what I'm saying, is if you are a tour person, make it a point to put a little independent travel in your thing, and make it a little bit of an adventuresome independent travel, okay? Now, on the flip side of that, if you are an independent traveler, take a tour. Maybe it's a city tour, or maybe it's like a cooking class, culinary tour. Take a tour where you are going to be in with a group of people that you don't know, okay? Just for the experience of doing something a little different than you might normally do it. Put yourself in that kind of social situation, take a chance on meeting some new friends, but also just to experience what that tour and that schedule type of travel feels like. And just, as I say, see it from the other side. I guess that's the whole traveler tip, is take a chance and see it from the other side. Whatever travel you choose to do, try a little bit of the other one. Okay, I hope everyone has absolutely wonderful travels. That is it for today's episode. I hope you have enjoyed it and gotten something out of it, and I'll see you next time.